Hey everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be speaking about double struck and multiple struck coins. Now, there's a lot of different ways and presentations that this can take, but we're going to bring in error expert Travis, who is a error coin collector and dealer, and we'll be going over everything from the flip over double strike to situations where it's super close overlaps versus very well documented multiple strikes that are super clear to the eye. To learn all about them, their prices, how they come about, let's get into the video and head on over to our shared presentation. And now we're at the presentation. We're with Travis. Thanks for joining us. And we've got some really cool double and multiple struck coins in front of us, some real highlights, the three in front, but we'll go through some auction records. But what's the basics of a double struck coin, Travis? How does it happen? And we'll be going over different types along the way. But I guess, yeah, how does it happen is the first question.
How it happens is a coin can be struck normally. It can also be struck as an error initially, and then it either fails to eject the press and gets struck again, or in other cases, it could leave the press as a finished coin and then somehow find its way back into a press again.
Yeah, that's not something that I had thought about too much. In this case, we certainly know that it's not going to have left the press, but I'll ask you a few more questions about that later. This one is double struck, but it's also been double struck in the collar. It's a really cool coin, but what is the in the collar significance? Is that rarer? And maybe we can just go over, you can see how it's rotated a bit, and as opposed to being double struck where half of the next strike is off center. What does that mean, basically?
Yeah, double struck in the collar is more rare than one that is struck off center for the second strike. This one is pretty neat here because of the significant rotation between the strikes. So oftentimes when you see coins double struck in the collar, they're only slightly rotated, where this one has a really nice rotation, and you can see design elements from both strikes very easily. A lot of them that are double struck in the collar, the first strike details often, most of them get annihilated with the second strike. So this one's a really, really nice example. And funny that it's so circulated.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask was, 1913, it's old and now it's going to be extra, extra rare in addition to being a slightly better date here. But did people just not care about this sort of an error and people weren't paying
Yeah,
attention?
back back when this coin was made, people didn't value errors like they do now. So I'm, of course, just guessing here that this might have just been carried around as a pocket piece by somebody, to show their friends. Hard to say, but it's unusual um, that it has so much detail like this and would be so circulated.
Yeah, no, it does feel really out of the ordinary. Our next one, sort of funny, maybe, or definitely a details coin. They just graded it genuine. It was double struck again in collar, Morgan dollars. Obviously, the error prices are going to be pretty high. This one sold for over $1,000. Somebody graffitied John into it, but it also shows, it's not as crazy of a in collar double strike. It's like it looks like some of the features are doubled when in reality it's double struck. But any comments on this piece? And
Yeah,
also,
this
as a question, just like how do details coins, how does that play into errors in terms of being way less expensive, or does it not matter as much what the grade is?
kind of depends on the problem. So, like this particular one, because it's so distracting, that's would definitely lower the price significantly versus if it wasn't there. An example I could think of would be maybe some sort of off metal, wrong planchet strike where somebody might have nicked the edge or carved into it a little bit just to see if it was plated or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which that might not affect the value as much as having somebody's name written prominently. So I think it kind of depends on how it graded genuine in the first place. This particular coin, though, this is kind of what I was saying on the last one, where there's some fairly obvious doubled designs here, but not nearly as obvious as the last coin. That's what I was kind of getting at with double strikes in the collar. being not so dramatic often, which this would be a less dramatic example, although it is still very nice.
Yeah, that's certainly it's something people can also look for, pay close attention to their Morgans if they're looking for VAMs. Is there sort of a series as we move to the next one where these are super common? I doubt people are going to be able to find this on seated Liberty quarters, but is
Yeah,
it like this Lincoln cents are the place to look for it? And then after that, maybe we can just go over this
yeah,
coin and if old ones were more prone to being double struck, but maybe it's the cent that's the most likely.
yeah. Memorial sense for sure would be um, the easiest to
Okay.
acquire. Something like this seated Liberty is basically unique, which the price reflects that. Yeah. So this would be if you were looking to have, a centerpiece of a double struck coin collection, this one right here would be a nice one. Because
Yeah.
yeah, this is
Do,
spectacular.
do you think that how does the different, this is clearly the second strike is well off center. What's the difference? Was this then recycled and then struck again totally differently, or do you think that it didn't quite eject from the planchet and then got struck again, and
It,
maybe no coin was under it, so it's well struck on both sides? What do you think?
yeah, most likely this is true of really all double and multi-struck coins, is they're almost always going to be struck at the same time for the second strike or any subsequent strikes as the first strike. So it'd be unusual that it would be from a different die pair, but there have been some that have found, and people have taken a very close look at die markers and that kind of thing to be able to determine that it was from a different set of dies. Without looking at this in hand, it would be the most likely assumption that this was struck by the same set of dies and it just got hit again about 50% off center. What makes this one extra nice, I just want to point out, is the fact that it shows two dates. So error collectors very much like a date showing, and especially more than one date, makes it more desirable.
That's really cool. No, thanks for sharing that
Doesn't
extra.
I just want to add, it doesn't really matter on a spectacular coin like that because, if you're looking for a double strike, you're not going to find very many. In some cases, there might be none that exist on a certain series. So, you take them as they come. But
Yeah, yeah. This one also a nice combination, not just your average double struck nickel, also coming in on a copper planchet. Do you think it's more likely that this occurred because you were dealing with a strange planchet, or is that just is
it
it
it could be, yeah, it could be because this is smaller in diameter. It didn't eject properly. That's highly likely. I really like this one just because it's a wrong planchet off metal in conjunction with being double struck. This is just a really, really nice combo error.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I know you had mentioned in the past 1980. The nickels are often struck on the Lincoln cents. Are there any like clear dates where there's a fair amount of double struck ones, or
No, these wrong planchet off metal coins very rarely come double struck or multi struck. So this one's very unusual in that it's double struck, and the two strikes are so easily seen. This is just a great example.
Yeah, I really like how the head is super clear, and then you can
Yeah,
also see Monticello there on the back. The next one is going to be a proof. I don't know if it makes sense that it's way tougher to. I mean, proof errors in general, I think, are challenging, but the
yes.
double struck nature, I didn't see too many at all that were modern proofs or proofs in general that are double struck. Do you think the valuation of 720 is low on this? And any other comments on this coin?
I think 720 is a great price for this particular piece. Proofs that are double struck like this, they're usually closer together and as far as degree of separation between the strikes. So having this one having a second strike 95% off center is much more unusual for double struck proofs. So they're usually either rotated in collar or struck the first time slightly off center and then struck again slightly off center. So this one's pretty nice that it has such a separation between the two. And it's got a little indent on the second strike, which, oh yeah, they did note it on the holder.
It's yeah, different type for those that might not know, indent, how would you describe that?
So this would be another, usually a planchet or some other obstruction was covering part of the planchet when it was struck. So there, in theory, if it's out there, there's another coin that would mate with this one. So it would be, you know, struck off center, maybe, or it was some other combination of errors, but this coin had a mate at one time. Whether or not it's out there in the world is another story, and it, might have been destroyed.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. This one is like an unbelievable, just super eye appealing, and it's got the double struck nature where it doesn't appear like the reverse gets shown on this side. Like, how is all of this occurring?
So this particular coin obviously is a flip over. So it flipped over between the first and the second strike. And then the second strike was up against another planchet. That's why it's uniface on one side. And this would be another example where there was a second error that mated with this coin that would have had a brockage.
And what do you think the value, say this was a Lincoln Memorial, how would it be for a regular, double struck second strike off center versus that second strike
Uh,
being flip over?
If this was a Lincoln Memorial flip over dated on both sides, I'll go ahead and pretend that the grade is a mint state grade and it's not some kind of unusual date. I would expect that coin to be at least a couple of $100 usually. So that would be for a Lincoln. This, if it had the same look, would be a great flip over double strike. But these days, for a flip over showing that much design, be usually at least a couple of $100, potentially several hundred.
Okay.
It was up
And
for bid, and there was a lot of competition for it.
what do you think
And
if it
that,
was?
I'm sorry, and the fact that it's dated on both sides is really nice.
Yeah, yeah. Would it be different if it was not a flip over for a regular Lincoln? I should have had some more
It,
examples of those.
yeah, flip overs. They're much more rare than just your standard double strike. So being flip over always adds extra value.
And then our next coin is going to be another sort of fully rotated. This one, gold errors are extremely challenging to come by. That's why this is,
Yeah.
$57,000, which is just a huge sum of money. But does the 180-degree rotation, is that something that's like special or different, or does it not really factor into the price how rotated something is?
I I believe that yes, the fact that it's a full 180 degrees played into the price of this somewhat, just because 180 degrees, as I said before, would be pretty unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also pretty neat, just that you can see so much design detail from the first strike. This is
Yeah.
just a great example of a double struck in collar and being gold. I mean, this thing is, yeah, choice.
That's for sure. And the price reflects it. I think next we're going to move on to something that's multiple struck. So maybe we can go over, does it normally occur the same way that something is, struck multiple times, is just double struck except more, or is there something
Yeah,
else playing into it? It's not
yeah,
like this is a die cap or something like that, which
right.
might
So
receive
yeah,
multiple strikes, but like what are the different distinctions and which is rarer? I guess that's another question.
the more strikes that it has, the more scarce it is. Um, but it does happen the same way where, it might, a double strike, it might get struck a second time and then find its way out of the press. This particular piece, hung around for three more strikes. There were likely other planchets trying to be fed in. So oftentimes, when you see something multiple struck like this, it will be uniface on one side or indented or perhaps brockaged by another coin. So this one's kind of neat in that it doesn't seem to have any interference from other struck coins or planchets, and that it's die struck on both sides for all five strikes. And they have nice separation. So a lot of multi-struck coins. You can see this especially in a lot of multi-struck state quarters. For instance, the additional strikes will be very closely overlapped. And so at first glance, they'll look more double struck rather than multi-struck. But this one is nice in that at a glance, you can see that it's struck multiple times quite easily.
Yeah, I like how it has the multiple dates all in a
I
row and then
was
the states,
just
states,
about to
states.
add, yeah, the multiple dates also. I mean, this is a nice. Oh, and the date and the mint mark are pretty nice too. So this is that's a really great coin.
Totally. I mean, this is 2004 error market, I think is strengthened quite a bit. Do you think this is like a $3,000 coin today or maybe a little less or a little more? How do
I
you price it?
wouldn't go as high as 3,000. It wouldn't surprise me if I saw this at auction today to sell for 1,500 or perhaps more.
Interesting. After
Yeah,
that,
at 920, I would be a buyer right now.
yeah, I really like the progression on that. And I was going to say this one, the progression is a little bit different because it looks like it's struck 5 times, but it's well off center. No extra date, but I really like how well preserved the original strike is itself. But a lot of close strikes. If you're looking, at
Yeah.
you see a D there, and then like another E, so that's like strike number, maybe 4 and 5, and then this D also has, there's like two strikes that come after the first one for a total of 5, only sold for $260. Is this a more common multiple struck presentation or is it a different
Um,
one?
this one's pretty unusual in that um, it looks just double struck until you can. And actually, I'm looking on the obverse side. It's hard to even tell that there's any extra strikes, but then you're looking at the reverse and it's, very clear that there's multiple strikes there on the off center portion.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, as far as price goes, probably these days this would sell for a little more just because it's kind of more unusual. However, if it was struck 5 times, like the previous example, where it's just much more eye appealing and obvious, then, that's probably why you're seeing such a higher price realized.
Yeah. I think the next
But
one.
I want to just add that having any coin struck multiple times is very rare
Okay. Is
and
this
not
like,
often found.
how does the average double strike, if you take the same Lincoln Memorial cent and you have one that's double struck and one that's triple struck, what's the value differential?
I'll use this coin as an example. If this was just double struck without these multiple strikes, with everything else being the same, that it's NGC certified at 66 red and that date and mint mark, this coin would sell for probably 75 to 125, give or take.
Okay.
So being that it was struck 5 times definitely added a lot to the price. And like I
Yeah.
say, if this was sold today, I would expect it to sell for probably more than 260 at auction.
Okay.
But you never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that you can discern it because I just saw our next one. This one, I think you can tell that it's struck multiple times from the reads, and I was looking at it pretty closely. And I think that there's a little bit, if you're looking super closely, that it is struck 6 times, but much less obvious. And if you showed it to me for 2 or 3 seconds, maybe I'd pick up that the reads are off, but it's not like extremely obvious. And it sold still for $4,000,
Yeah.
1886 mint state 64. I don't know. I'd price that like 90 or $100 these days. Maybe I'm off that, but like it's a big difference. So
Yeah.
is this common? Are there a lot of these, do you think, out there where people can try to look really closely at their coins for multiple strikes, or does it not really?
Definitely can't hurt to look. I would say that for PCGS to determine that this was struck 6 times, they're obviously looking at it under magnification and somehow coming to that conclusion. Just glancing at it, it definitely looks to me like it's struck more than once, but they must have had some way to determine that it was struck 6 times. So they're probably looking at some design element under magnification. But yeah, it's always always good to look through your stuff. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, and then our last one, it begs the question, and this one's on a feeder finger or aluminum scrap, I think is what you had said in a previous video, what
Yeah,
they used to call the feeder finger errors. But is there a maximum number of times that something you could, is theoretically able to be struck? I feel like I've seen something struck 15 times, but I don't know what the
I
highest number is.
I have seen. I'm going by memory, but I want to say I've seen a nickel, and I want to say it was slabbed as being struck over 100 times.
Wow.
I don't remember the exact wording of the slab, but I think it said struck 100 plus times. And it certainly looked like it had been struck dozens and dozens of times, but they were closely overlapped.
Hmm.
In theory, there really isn't a limit. Um, I'd say in practicality, you're usually not going to find something struck more than about 10 times, generally speaking.
Okay, well, that sort of limits us to this one.
Yeah,
You know,
I want to go back a little bit, just how this is described. So, about approximately 20 years ago, a handful of coins like this came out, struck on aluminum scrap. And I don't know who it was, but somebody within the error hobby eventually figured out that these aluminum scraps were actually something called a feeder finger, which is a piece of the coin press itself that helps feed planchets and struck coins in and out of the press. And the feeder finger would get out of whack, get struck by the dies, like this South Carolina quarter. And at the time that this was certified, they obviously didn't know that these were feeder fingers. So all the TPGs at the time were calling them aluminum scrap, but they have since changed it to say struck on a feeder finger.
yeah.
Um, and through all denominations, there's a couple of dozen, roughly. There might be a little more coins known struck on feeder fingers of every denomination from cent to dollar.
Well, that's one to be on the lookout, or it could be
Yeah,
a crown piece of somebody's error collection if they're trying to step it up and have something super rare.
definitely. Yeah.
But interesting that this not only was struck on the feeder finger, but then is this it doesn't look that much smaller than a quarter planchet in this case. Do you have any idea? Are they more prone because of the aluminum to get stuck when they get struck? Is it common to see feeder finger errors with multiple strikes, or is this unique?
Yeah, it's actually um, of feeder fingers, much more common to see them struck multiple times than just once. So they almost always come with multiple strikes.
Okay, cool. Well, is there anything else, going through these that you would that I might have missed in asking questions? I feel like we have a thorough recounting of the different types of strikings, how they occur, and some of the cool things to look for. Anything that I might have missed?
I don't think so. Hopefully, I said everything I wanted to.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, Travis, and we'll see you on a video soon. I'll be
All
filming
right.
the next one right after this, but then releasing it a few weeks later. So
All
thanks.
right. Sounds good.
Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. I've also got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow me there. TreasuretownYT.com is the main channel website. Definitely give that a visit. I've got a lot of information about me up there and the channel. CoinGrabBag.com as well currently redirects there, but it's some good opportunities for very fair grab bags, both made by me and other sellers. A lot of different options, so that's a good way to support. There's also TreasuretownCoins.com. In the future, my coin dealing operation will be done out of that website. CoinMeltPrice.com for updates on the melt prices of your coins, both US and world. A lot of resources in that website. And then CoinsMetals.Cards.com being developed right now as a marketplace and news source for coins, metals, cards, and collectibles in general. So I'll see you on my future videos. Looking forward to seeing you there, and hope you have a good day.